Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Professors, doctors, academics, researchers, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, we are about to begin. Let me do some housekeeping notes to ensure that this virtual event can be run smoothly. Firstly, I would like to remind those who are on the camera to dress and appear appropriately. Hence, the session will broadcast lively. You are allowed to turn off your camera. However, please do not forget to turn it on at the end of the session for the photography session. Secondly, please prepare your questions and you may raise the questions either in the chat box or unmute yourself at the end of the session and our speaker will answer them accordingly. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Alhamdulillah. Wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Amma ba'd. Good morning, everyone. Respected guest speaker of the conference, Prof. Tamim Usama, respected Prof. Dawood, Director of the International Institute for Muslim Unity, respected Associate Prof. Fatmir Shehu, Deputy Director of International Institute for Muslim Unity, IIUM, respected presenters, Dr. Ali Zaman, Dr. Shukri, distinguished guests, professors, invitees, doctors, lecturers, postgraduates, academics, students, young researchers. I welcome all of you with the Islamic greetings. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. May peace and blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be upon all of you. Alhamdulillah, all praise to Allah. We are able to convene this morning to participate in this conference on Muslim minorities in Southeast Asia and subcontinent, realities and prospects, organized by International Institute for Muslim Unity, IIUM, International Islamic University Malaysia, with the collaboration of Reveal Knowledge and Human Sciences Graduate Society, Workshop. My name is Ashad. I am PhD candidate of IIUM and the president of Workshop, holding a bachelor's in Islamic Studies and Masters in Buddhist Studies, and I will be serving as your moderator to this conference. On behalf of the IIUM and IIMU, International Institute for Muslim Unity, I would like to extend a very warm welcome to all of you. We appreciate your participation and giving your valuable time to this conference. Let us begin our program today with the recitation of Ummul Kitab al-Fatiha. Thank you very much. Now we are moving to the main part of the conference. It's a keynote speech from Prof. Tamim Usama. Let me introduce Prof. Tamim Usama briefly. Dr. Tamim Usama is a professor at the Department of Usuluddin and Comparative Religion, International Islamic University, Malaysia, Kuala Lumpur. He obtained a BSc in chemistry and MA in Arabic language from the University of Madras. He received MPhil and a PhD in Islamic Studies, specializing in contemporary Islamic thought from Aligarh Muslim University, India. He taught more than 35 courses in various branches of Islamic sciences in the Faculty of Islamic Revealed Knowledge and Human Sciences, IIUM. He has supervised several MA and PhD theses and dissertations. He was involved in non-formal education activities that focus on training Malaysian and international students from various countries. He has served in various capacities of academic administration in IIUM. As a Deputy Dean, Student Affairs for the Faculty of Islamic Revealed Knowledge and Human Sciences, as a Head of the Department for Islamic Revealed Knowledge and Heritage, as a Deputy Dean for Admission and International Affairs, as the Head of Usuluddin and Comparative Religion Department, Acting Secretary of the Senate of the International Islamic University, Malaysia, Kuala Lumpur, and the Dean, International Institute of Islamic Thought and Civilization, ISTAC. He is the author of 7 books. His book, History and Science of the Quran obtained the Ismail Raji Al-Faruqi Award. He has presented numerous papers in several national and international conferences and seminars. He has published many articles in internationally referred and indexed academic journals. Beside the above, he is also a member of the editorial board of various journals. In addition, he has been appointed as an external examiner for several MA and PhD theses and dissertations from Malaysia and overseas. He has strong involvement and the passion on the discussion on Muslim minorities. So he is the ideal personality to address the conference as a keynote speaker. Without further delay, I would like to invite Prof. Tamim Osama for his keynote speech. Please welcome, Prof. You have 40 minutes.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalam ala ashrafil anbiya'i wal mursaleen. Sayyidina Muhammadin sallallahu alayhi wasallam wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Dear moderator, Professor Dawood, Director of International Institute for Muslim Unity, Associate Professor Dr. Fatimir Shehu, Deputy Director, International Institute for Muslim Unity, fellow speakers for Thailand and the Philippines in today's conference, professors, colleagues, honored guests, students, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. First and foremost, I express my gratitude to the International Institute for Muslim Unity for inviting me to deliver a keynote speech on Muslim minorities in Southeast Asia and the subcontinent, realities and prospects. Focusing on Muslim minorities in Southeast Asia and the subcontinent is pertinent since Muslims have faced unprecedented problems and challenges over the years. Each country in Southeast Asia has its own set of circumstances. However, there are some parallels to be seen. The topic given to me today is divided into two parts. Southeast Asia is one, and the subcontinent is the other. Southeast Asia comprises Thailand, the Philippines, Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, Singapore, and Myanmar. Since it is difficult to cover all countries within the allotted time, I will provide critical information about some of the Southeast Asian countries before moving on to India, where the current situation of the Muslim minority merits international attention to resolve the crisis. Muslims live as minorities in several countries of the world today. Some countries are pretty visible. In others, they are insignificant in number. Let us begin with Myanmar. Myanmar is a hilly country with a long history as an independent Burmese state. History has witnessed Muslim participation in the struggle for Myanmar's independence and nation building. They have been living in Myanmar for the last 1,000 years. Their participation in war and civil services during Burmese kingdoms and the British rule proved their loyalty to the country. Thus, hundreds of Muslim institutions, mosques, and madrasas in every town and city of Myanmar were allowed by the authority. It was a golden period for Myanmar Muslims. They were allowed to participate in activities without discrimination among religious or ethnic groups. Thus, it was a peaceful coexistence. The first democratic rule that began in 1948 and ended in 1962 can also be termed charming days for them, as they were in a good position, for they were allowed to exercise their democratic rights, although some restrictions in the sector of the religious area were encountered. Myanmar's population consists of Burmese 87.59%, Christians 6.2%, Muslims 4.3%, Animis 0.8%, and Hindus 0.5%. The 2008 Constitution of Myanmar treats Buddhism as the de facto state religion, but recognizes Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, and animism. Despite the recognition, religious and ethnic minorities not belonging to the Buddhist faith have faced persecution. In 2015, Myanmar passed race and religion laws supported by Buddhist nationalists. These laws regulate religious conversion, marriage, and births, and restrict the religious freedom of non-Buddhists, particularly Muslims. Previous civilian governments and the Myanmar army institutionalized discrimination against Rohingya Muslims and denied Rohingya fundamental rights and dignity. In 2017, the Myanmar armed forces perpetrated mass killings and rapes against the Rohingya Muslims in Rakhine State, forcing over 745,000 to flee to Bangladesh within days. Since 2017, thousands of Rohingya have fled to other countries due to ongoing violence. There is a pending case at the International Court of Justice for violations of the Genocide Convention. The Muslims of Rohingya have been categorized as either foreigners or stateless under the new Burman citizenship law of 1982. The subject of the Muslim minority being persecuted in Myanmar has been emphasized in the world media, and thus Muslims living outside of Myanmar are conscious of their fellow Muslims' situation. Muslims are placed in a large concentration camp where they are denied their human rights, despite historical realities and the Rohingyas' centuries-long history in Myanmar. Arrest without cause, forced labor, torture, custodial killings, mobility restrictions, cultural and religious activities, rape, a forceful marriage of Muslim girls to Buddhists, prohibitions on wearing hijab, turbans, and sporting beards, and so on are all commonplace. Given the contemporary climate of persecution of Muslims, it is impossible to imagine what sort of strategy would be appropriate in these conditions in Myanmar. The Rohingya genocide is a series of ongoing persecutions and killings of the Muslim Rohingya people by the military. The genocide has consisted of two phases. The first was a military crackdown from October 2016 to January 2017, and the second occurred in August 2017. The crisis forced over 1 million Rohingya to flee to other countries. Most fled to Bangladesh, while others escaped to India, Thailand, Malaysia, and other parts of Southeast Asia. In August 2018, a study estimated that more than 24,000 Rohingya people were killed by the military and local Buddhists since the clearance operations started on 25 August 2017. The study also estimated that over 18,000 Rohingya Muslim women and girls were raped. 116,000 Rohingyans were beaten, and 36,000 Rohingyans were thrown into fires. Most died from gunshots, while others were burned to death in their homes. The sources described their killings as violent deaths. According to the Arkan Project, evidence of mass graves was uncovered. As a result, the United States, United Kingdom, and other countries refer to the events as ethnic cleansing. With this, let me focus on Thailand. The 2010 census indicated that 93% of the population is Theravada Buddhist and 5% Muslim. NGOs, academics, and religious groups state that 85 to 95% of the population is Theravada Buddhist and 5 to 10% Muslim. Groups comprising less than 5% of the population include animists, Christians, Confucians, Hindus, Jews, Sikhs, and Taoists. Muslims comprise Thailand's most significant religious minority and are concentrated mainly in the southernmost provinces of Narathiwat, Pattani, Yala, and Satun. Most Thai Muslims are of Malay descent, reflecting the common cultural heritage. Thailand's southernmost provinces share with Malaysia. Islam is said to have been introduced to the Malay Peninsula by Arab traders during the 13th century. Thailand's Muslims enjoy state support and are free to teach and practice their religion according to their tenets. There are more than 3,000 registered mosques in Thailand, which are the center of the Muslim community. They are used for social activities and religious services. Muslims are allowed to study Islam from secondary schools to the university level. Some women wear hijab in government schools and the workplace. There are many private Islamic schools in provinces where Islam and Arabic language are taught. Some Muslims travel abroad for religious studies in Islamic countries. Attitudes towards Muslims in Thailand are more heterodox, depending on which Muslims are referred to. Attitudes towards the assimilated Muslims outside the Deep South differ from those held towards the ethnically Malay Muslims. Durai Raji, one of the researchers, discusses the general perception among Southern Thai Buddhists of Muslims as lazy and violent. This is his point. It has to be qualified. Of course, we have a speaker from Thailand who will deliberate on this particular issue because I have taken this data from one source. Violence has exacerbated the two communities' preconceptions and prejudices in the South. It is also stated that anti-Buddhist propaganda distributed by the insurgent groups and violent actions towards the Buddhist community and their religious orders has also driven a deeper wedge between them. This is also to be clarified, inshallah, by our learned speaker from Thailand. Let us come to Vietnam. In 2022, the total population of Vietnam is 99 million. About 85% of Vietnamese are Buddhists, and Muslims constitute 1% of the total population. Vietnam's constitution states that citizens can follow any religion or none, and that all religions are equal before the law. The Constitution also mandates respect and protection for freedom of belief and religion. However, it allows authorities to restrict human rights, including religious freedom, for national defense, national security, social order and security, social morality, and community well-being. Vietnam's 2018 law on belief and religion contains similar provisions permitting restrictions on the right to religious freedom. Vietnam is a religiously diverse country with religious demographics varying greatly across research studies and reports. At the end of 2020, the government officially recognized 16 religions and 43 religious organizations. Many groups, however, refuse to register for fear of persecution or concern over their independence, which has led state-sponsored and independent religious groups to compete over who represents their religion. For the Muslims of Vietnam, the 1960s were a difficult time. Many limitations were imposed on Muslims and Islamic practice. But in 1978, the government ruled that Muslims were not a threat and some restrictions were lifted. Reading materials are needed. They have short of reading materials. And local Muslims must be educated as teachers. In Vietnam, the Muslim population is tiny and marginalized. While the state is large, discipline and exercises a form of totalitarian rule that permits little space for dissent or ethnic tension. There is also discontent or dissatisfaction among some Cham Muslims that the Vietnamese government is not doing much to improve their situation. In September 2021, the Ministry of Home Affairs issued an action plan for the state management of belief and religion, emphasizing state control of religion, to ensure political and social stability. Let us move on to Laos, which is another country in Southeast Asia. Laos is a Buddhist majority country. The Muslim population constitutes approximately 0.01%. Laotian Muslims are found in Vientiane. The Laotians work as traders, farmers, and in various businesses. Laotian Muslims develop to 5 kilometers from the city center. The knowledge of Islam is minimal. Only Muslims over 60 are conversant with Islam's doctrines and practices. The middle generation of Muslims has the same level of education as the general public. Their understanding of Islam is almost non-existent. There is a demand for reading materials and the training of certain local Muslims to serve as teachers. It is being looked into whether some of these young Muslims would be eligible to study overseas. Because Muslims are such a small community, the government has no interest in or connection with them. The Lao Muslim Association is registered with the Ministry of Interior. The majority of the limitations were lifted in 1990. It is not advisable to make direct contact with foreign organizations. In these circumstances, the prospects for Islamic preaching remain incredibly bleak. Religious groups operating in multiple provinces must obtain National Ministry of Home Affairs approval. Groups operating in multiple districts are required to obtain provincial level approval. and groups operating in multiple villages are required to obtain district level approval. Approvals at the corresponding level are required if a religious group wishes to operate beyond its local congregation. Activities in another village require approval from district authorities. Religious groups must submit annual plans of activities other than routine events in advance for the local authorities to review, investigate, and approve. All houses of worship must register under the law and applicable regulations. Any maintenance, restoration, renovation, and construction activities at religious facilities must receive the ministry approval from all levels. Local authorities may provide opinions regarding the building, care and maintenance of religious facilities, present their findings to their respective provincial governors and city mayors for consideration, and subsequently ask the Minister of Home Affairs to investigate, consider, and approve activities conducted in religious facilities. Ministry of Education and Sports and Ministry of Home Affairs must approve the travel of clergy and religious churches traveling abroad for specialist studies. Generally, any students going abroad for study require approval from the Ministry of Education and Sports. Religious organizations conducting religious activities overseas must also receive approval from the appropriate geographical Ministry of Home Affairs level in Laos. This information has been drawn from 2017 report on international freedom. Now we come to the Philippines. We have a speaker to focus more on the Philippines, and therefore I try to provide some key information. Islam was established in the Philippines as early as the 15th century, with the arrival of Arab and Malay Muslim traders who converted some of the island's native inhabitants. According to the 2015 census by the National Statistics Office, approximately 79.8% of the population is Roman Catholic, and approximately 9% belong to other Christian groups. Approximately 6% of the population is Muslim, according to the Philippine Statistics Authority. But another source says that 12% of the total population is Muslim. And this comes from 2017 report on international religious freedom. Most Muslims are members of various ethnic minority groups and reside in Mindanao and nearby islands in the south. As Filipino Muslims are known, the majority of these Moros dwell in Mindanao's western and central islands in the Sulu archipelago. Most Filipino Muslims perform Hajj annually, and Muslim organizations build mosques and madrasas with funding raised from foreign sources as well. In 2016, the International Religious Freedom Report noted that approximately 14% of the school population in Mindanao attended the madrasas, the Islamic schools. The number of madrasas across the country varied widely. Government officials estimated the number as more than 2,000. In the Philippines, freedom of religion is enshrined in the Constitution, which states the free exercise and enjoyment of religious profession and worship without discrimination or preference shall forever be allowed. The government continued to implement the strategic peace roadmap, which it said would address the aspirations of Muslim and other separatist groups in Mindanao. This is taken from 2017 report on international religious freedom. The freedom of religion in the Philippines Constitution protects Islamic family law regarding marriage and divorce. It also recognizes the Sharia civil law system as the part of national law, which applies only to Muslims. However, the Sharia courts of the Philippines are under the supervision of the Supreme Court. Mindanao is a Muslim autonomous area, and Manila is allocating all its resources to building infrastructure in Muslim regions. The Moro National Liberation Front is the most popular. In 2005, the government implemented its united curriculum, designed to integrate madrasas into the national education system. Several private madrasas began training educators to teach mathematics, science, English, Filipino, and other subjects. It is said that the government hopes to certify Islamic schools that offer a full range of courses in the coming years, allowing their graduates to enter public high schools or colleges. And we have a learned speaker from the Philippines. He will be, inshallah, expanding the discourse for the benefit of our today's audience. With this, we move on to India, which needs special attention, not only from this learned audience, but also from the international audience. India's daily events show that India's Muslim future is far from assured. They confront unprecedented challenges due to the spread of Islamophobia and anti-Muslim propaganda. Muslims are in a predicament with a complex set of circumstances. Their future is uncertain. This minority, peace-loving community, which historically and traditionally has provided its resources and sacrificed its lives for India's independence and development, faces the risk of their lives today, and their patriotism and loyalty are doubted. Anti-Muslim sentiments orchestrate communal violence, mass demolition, and Muslim extermination. With a free hand, fanatics and fascists even call to implement the quote-unquote Myanmar model to rid Muslims of India. The Supreme Court verdict on the Babri Mosque, withdrawal of the special status for Kashmir provided by Article 370 of India's Constitution, Citizenship Amendment Act, and the proposed National Register of Citizens are some of the implications of hatred against Muslims and ignoring their contributions to India's development and struggle. Forcing Muslims to utter Jai Shri Ram means Hail Lord Rama. Criminalizing beef vendors and eaters. Distributing saffron flags to Hindu vendors to differentiate from the Muslim vendors. Engineering the Delhi violence. Rumor mongering that mosques are coronavirus reservoirs. Denying medical treatment for Muslims. Calling to kill Muslim corona patients. Boycotting Muslim stalls. Vandalizing Muslim homes and shops under cover of lockdown are the consequences of Islamophobia in India. Slogans like love jihad, dance jihad, sing jihad, food jihad, and corona jihad are spelled out, planting hatred among their Hindu fellow friends and village mates. These slogans raise disheartening skepticism in India's plural society, where many religions, cultures, and traditions are in place. The Tablighi Jamaat, committed to developing Muslims' fraternity, morality, spirituality, religiosity, and socio-religious consciousness and steadfastness, held a religious assembly or ijtima in the first week of March 2020, just before the spread of coronavirus. has been characterized as the occasion of corona terrorism and Talibani crime, a one-sided declaration of sheer bias with no basis. Because the untruth spread virally, it accelerated the inflammation of anti-Muslim sentiments, causing great concern among innocent Muslims, Hindus, and others. The phrase "Corona is coming," the phrase "Corona is coming" was used to describe Muslims. Whenever they saw Muslims, they were saying Corona is coming. This stigmatization occurred, and it still occurs, reflecting the climax of Islamophobia. The COVID-19 pandemic is exploited to demonize Muslims and raise doubts about their patriotism and loyalty to the nation. Since the Babri Mosque was demolished in 1992, the screaming continues. Babri Mosque is just the beginning. Kashi and Mathura are next. Consequently, the dissemination of false propaganda that mosques built of the temples were raised in Kashi and Mathura. This is a hot topic these days. Kashi is one of the important cities in Uttar Pradesh. Same thing is Mathura. And in these two places, there are temples, and these temples are alleged to have been constructed after the demolition. A call for genocide and violence against Muslims was made at a religious parliament known as Dharam Sansad, held on 17 and 19 December 2021. Saffron-robed zealots delivered inflammatory and provocative speeches. An open call was made to murder Muslims. I quote, this is the quotation taken from a source which is very authentic, and it is said by a Hindu saint. If 100 of us are ready to kill 2 million of them, we will win and make India a Hindu nation. And quotation ends. Another anti-Muslim propaganda that disturbed Muslims was the anti-hijab campaign in Karnataka, a state in southern part of India, in February 2022, 3 months before or 4 months before. Muslim girl students were publicly harassed. About 20,000 Muslim female students in Karnataka were not allowed to write their higher secondary public examinations because they wore hijab. Muslims are driven to discard their Islamic values. According to media sources, some female students removed their hijab and wrote their examinations. In this way, Muslims are compelled to abandon their religious identity. On another note, a Muslim woman with a hijab was denied to vote in the Tamil Nadu local body elections in February 2022. Similarly, Islamophobia is on the rise in some form or another. This trend depresses India's peace-loving citizens, Hindus and Muslims alike. Individual Muslims, teachers, and members of opposition parties have called for an end to this dangerous trend. Muslim students were urged not to fast in the month of Ramadan. This is the first time that the Muslims have witnessed in the state of Tamil Nadu. It happened in a school in Tamil Nadu's Krishnagiri district. Then the attack on a mosque in Muzaffarnagar, Bihar, was depressing, and it sowed stress, friction, turmoil, and instability. The fascists claimed the mosque minaret and hoisted the saffron flag, causing tension. These dilemmas confronting Muslims in contemporary India demonstrate that their future is unpredictable. Nupur Sharma's derogatory remarks towards the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and Islam on Republic TV and Times on 26th May 2022 were the most recent occurrence. It was last month. The case of Nupur Sharma is not a unique instance. India's Muslims condemned such remarks, but their voices went unnoticed for a few days until the Muslim world took up the issue and urged the authorities for clarification. The Muslim world expressed its displeasure with India's government. What happened?
We have 5 minutes more, Prof.
What happened? Afrin Fatima, among the protesters, had her residence bulldozed by the Uttar Pradesh government after her parents were arrested. The bulldozer culture or bulldozer politics is not new, but it has been extensively used to demolish Muslim houses and businesses. Since the time is less, let me move on to the conclusion. Finally, I would like to draw your attention to some prevalent assumptions, myths, prejudices, and misunderstandings about Muslim communities in our region. Muslims' allegiance to their communities is called into doubt. They are characterized as anti-nationals. They are neither patriotic nor compassionate towards their fellow people. They are antagonistic to modernization. These are some comments. Muslims are anti-West. They engage in anti-nation propaganda. They are a menace to the country's sovereignty and security. They are liabilities. Likewise, the number of assumptions is inexhaustible. In a negative light, Muslims are portrayed as fanatics. Muslims are branded as fundamentalists because they are committed to obeying Islamic foundations, basics, principles, faith, and beliefs as explained in the Quran. Yet, there is pejorative connotation in the Western tradition. As Muslims are religious, they are portrayed as extremists, fanatics, and zealots. Muslims are stereotyped as terrorists and violent. Nevertheless, Islam condemns all forms of violence and terrorism. Islamophobia and anti-Muslim propaganda have reached a pinnacle with insults and disparaging statements directed towards the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. It is not appropriate to characterize the entire Muslim Ummah as terrorists because some Muslims commit atrocities or do something against people. As a result, Muslim organizations and minority leaders must conduct a thorough investigation to ascertain the current situation and design strategies to solve the challenges. Of course, it is not easy, but attempts must be made to begin studies and conversations and move forward with finding solutions. What matters is that Muslims should learn from their history and develop new ideas that consider the contemporary realities in Muslim minority countries. One suggestion is that organizations be formed in each region. For example, in Southeast Asia, an umbrella organization comprised of Muslim minorities from various countries may be formed to discuss the difficulties Muslims face. To find a solution in India, all state-level NGOs, cultural organizations, and political parties must unite and engage in discussion. What is essential is that Muslims be willing to sit down with other religious and political leaders, which is very important, with the common goal of resolving the crisis of labeling Muslims as fundamentalists, extremists, and terrorists, Islamophobia, anti-Muslim propaganda, stigmatization, vilification, speaking against holy books, and insulting the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and projecting Muslims as anti-nationals, among other issues. Therefore, a starting point is required. A starting point is required. Nothing will be accomplished if we don't start. The Ummah can no longer afford to wait. The Ummah can no longer afford to wait. There must be a beginning. Delaying the exploration of solutions to such crises will almost certainly end in losing the Muslim Ummah. Delaying the exploration of solutions to crises will almost certainly end in the losing the Muslim Ummah. There will be no miracle. There will be no miracle. It is up to the people and leaders on the ground in the respective countries to take the initiative for this. And asking for miracles from the other side will be futile. There will be no miracle. It is up to the people and leaders on the ground in the respective countries to take the initiative for this, and asking for miracles from the other side will be futile. With this brief reference to some of the Southeast Asian countries and subcontinent, let me take this opportunity to thank the moderator for his patience and Imu for giving me this opportunity. Inshallah, we can discuss this issue further. The time is very short. We have two learned speakers who will focus on Thailand and the Philippines, and we will patiently listen to them to have more insights on these two countries. With this, thanking once again Imu for this opportunity. Thanking you all, my dear learned audience. Wabillahi tawfiq wal hidayah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Jazakumullah khairan. Thank you so much, Prof, for your wonderful presentation. As usual, your speech brought new insights from current research on the topic on Muslim minorities. Truly, your talks always bring new dimensions to the researchers to stick with their works. Indeed, Prof, you have covered a large area within this 40 to 45 minutes. And rather than bringing the issues, addressing the issues, you have highlighted some practical solutions on the issues that faced by Muslim minorities. Alhamdulillah, Jazakumullah khairan for your wonderful presentation. Now we are moving to our first presentation from Prof. Ali Zaman from Philippines, and I would like to introduce him briefly. Dr. Ali Zaman D. Gamon was born in Philippines. He received his BA degree in Islamic Studies from Mindanao State University. He received his second bachelor's degree on Human Sciences in Sociology and Anthropology from International Islamic University, Malaysia. He obtained his MA and PhD degrees from International Institute of Islamic Thought and Civilization, ISTAC, and International Islamic University, Malaysia, respectively. Dr. Ali Zaman is currently the Vice President for International Affairs of Ranao Council Al-Khwarizmi International College Foundation, and the Vice President for International Affairs of Imam Council of the Philippines. He is currently an Assistant Professor at the Kulliyah of Islamic Revealed Knowledge and Human Sciences, Department of Fundamental and Interdisciplinary Studies, International Islamic University, Malaysia. He has co-authored a book on fatwa management in the Philippines. Dr. Ali Zaman has written numerous academic papers presented at various national and international conferences. Dr. Ali Zaman has conducted various research projects too. He has strong involvement in the discussion on Muslim minorities, special focus on Philippines. So without further ado, I would like to invite Dr. Ali Zaman for his presentation on Muslim minorities of Philippines. Doctor, please welcome.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alamin wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya'i wal mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Subhanaka la ilma lana illa ma 'allamtana innaka antal alimul hakim wa la hawla wa la quwwata illa billahil aliyyil azim. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. Dear moderator, Brother Muhammad Ashhat, Prof. Dawood, the director of International Institute of Muslim Unity, IIUM, my Prof. Tamim Osama, from the Department of Usuluddin and Comparative Religion, Associate Professor Fatmir, and my fellow colleague also, Prof. Sukri Lamputi. Why I'm calling him as a colleague, because he is very much concerned about minority studies in this region. First of all, I would like to express my thanks to Prof. Thamim for providing us key informations pertaining to Muslim minorities in the region, especially when he emphasized about the framework of how to understand or how to overcome the problem of stigmatization of the Muslim communities in the region, as well as, he also emphasized that in order to solve the problem, then we have to start from a correct beginning, and that is the concept of equality. Now, let me very briefly inform you about what is the nature, the scope of my presentation today. Actually, my presentation, I have already completed the whole article, and I have agreed with Fatmer and Askat that I should be publishing it through their book. Inshallah, I will do some kind of modification since I have submitted it to other journals. Now, the title of the article is Rethinking the Culture of Knowledge and its implication for peace and sustainable development in the Philippines. Now, it is indeed the concern of this forum to revisit the overall development of Muslim communities in the region, particularly with regard to Islamic legal, educational, and economic institutions that had shaped Muslim socio-political landscape over the past few decades. Reflecting on the contemporary developments in social relations in the context of the Philippines and Thailand and other minority Muslim communities in the region, it reveals the myriad unresolved conflicts due to the flawed government policies that resulted in a number of maladies that include underdevelopment, division, tyranny, and oppression, as well as injustice, poverty, ignorance, and disease, which had already been highlighted by Prof. Thamim. Sad to note that in this era of multiculturalism and globalization, we have been witnessing the impact of materialistic and reductionist worldview of life and knowledge, which has unleashed not just destabilizing economic forces, but political and social ones as well, that the questions of ethnicity, religion, and nationality are becoming unraveled again in yet another cycle of revivalism. It is therefore the responsibility of the scientific communities in the region, as well as the leaders, to address the problem in a holistic manner, which many of us in this forum will agree that there is an urgent need to revisit the knowledge culture, its epistemological framework, and thus highlighting its contribution for the development of peace education and sustainable development in the Philippines, Thailand, and other Muslim communities in the region. It seems imperative for the global community in general and the policy makers in the region in particular to think and to reevaluate carefully and to fashion a comprehensive approach towards realizing multicultural practices that accommodates plurality of practices and worldview that will be manifested in the legal, educational, and economic reform for all citizens, Muslims and non-Muslims alike. My presentation today will be organized as follows. And actually, this is how my article is also been organized. And if I will not be able to cover what I'm going to mention here, I hope we can cover it during the question and answer session. Now, first, I shall provide comments on the national integration via education, which has made major transformational changes in both the national and the Muslim education system that allows the curriculum to be consciously revised to suit the needs of people by following the popular trends from Western and Islamic tradition. Second, brief discussion on the epistemological framework that relates to developing a culture of knowledge and its implication for peace and sustainable development in the Philippines. Third, to revisit government policies, because this is very important for all of us to really understand the underlying, let us say, underpinning philosophy of those policies on the development of Muslim Islamic institution within the context of a secular state. In line with this argument, some observation will be made on how culture of knowledge as it has been developed by policymakers have been contributing towards the national agenda for cultural unity or social solidarity, particularly its role in advancing civilizational renewal amid secularism. Fourth is to suggest possible areas for the integration of knowledge culture, which will place Muslim education in the Philippines in a new, I would say, I want to use the word, in a new positive light in the eyes of humanity. Because most of the time, as it was emphasized by Prof. Tamim, that this kind of Islamophobic understanding is really disturbing the so-called, the unity of social system. Now, as such, the unresolved root of conflict emanating from the intellectual segregation, not only religious segregation, but the most important thing is the intellectual segregation that is happening between the Christian majority and the Muslim minority, and we should be addressing that. Thus, the challenges of how to generate experts on developing knowledge culture and amid secularism as a new strategy for a meaningful transformation of Muslim communities in the Philippines should be also thoroughly understood. Now, fifth is we shall argue why the entire spectrum of our analysis should revolve on recognizing the Tawhidic worldview and epistemology is indeed relevant as a driving force for civilizational dialogue and understanding within the context of secular state, the Philippines. Such move should not be seen as dichotomous modes of existence, but a seamless continuum in the history of knowledge culture in the Philippines. And last but not the least, we shall argue that intercultural discourse can be spearheaded by Muslim institutions of higher learning to build bridges, channels of academic, scientific, and technical cooperation with other systems and educational institutions at the national level. It is not only within the region or within the autonomous region, but at the national level. Now, therefore, the philosophy of Islamic knowledge, culture, should serve both the interest of the country and the Muslim communities in the Philippines and beyond. Now, when we refer to many literature pertaining to Philippine studies with special attention to the Muslim in the Philippines, there are key terms in understanding Muslims, and it is quite unfortunate that these terms have been understood from a particular perspective or assumption, which is not actually um, in advantage for the Muslim communities. Now, with reference to that, we basically encounter the concept of moral problem, Muslim problem, Mindanao problem, which describe Muslim culture, religion, and identity as a problem to the majority. Obviously, such perspective is based on epistemological biases, and assumptions that fail to recognize the relevance of Islamic intellectual tradition and heritage. And this is actually really a problem that is not only confined in the Philippines, but also other Muslim communities. Before and after the proclamation of Philippine independence, the government had made some initiatives for the development of Islamic institutions as an instrument to solve the so-called Mindanao conflict or Muslim problem. But why, if we may ask, that this problem had played an important role in the development of Islamic legal and educational institution in the Philippines? How did this happen? How this question can be answered? And this can be answered by understanding the contemporary causes of moral struggle and different concessions given by government to overcome the so-called Mindanao conflict. Now, it is quite exasperating and frustrating as well to think that Muslim problem or Mindanao conflict is viewed as a sort of cancer to the government by many policymakers, particularly in the 70s. And as such, they argue that Mindanao conflict needs to be cured. I'm using the word needs to be cured before it becomes terminal to the whole nation. So now we can already feel that in the 70s, Muslim communities are presented as a national threat to the majority. Now, Muslims have been presented, as I said, to the majority as a strong threat to the nation because of the armed struggle that has gone on for so long and been unresolved, and they had even failed to come up with something workable solutions to end the so-called struggle, rebellion in the country. Now, Philippines as a secular state, there is no doubt, has a great tendency to conceptualize that problem as a political issue rather than a religious one. And this is actually the problem, because if it is understood as just a political or cultural, we will not be coming up with a concrete solution to the problem. However, as a critical analysis of its manifestation in the successive government and policies would suggest that the problem lies within the domain of religious intolerance between the majority and the Muslim minority. With the aspiration of integrating the Muslim communities into the national body politics, the successive governments from the tenure of Marcos Sr., known by many as the dictator in the Philippine government, in the history of Philippine government, to the president, to the outgoing president, Rodrigo Roa Duterte, and they institutionalized reform, which were introduced to readdress the problem by ensuring religious understanding between the two groups. Now, there are positive impacts of those reforms, and I have to affirm that. And those reforms introduced by the government from 1970s to the present, however, there are failures. Like, for example, if you examine the autonomous region for Muslim Mindanao, borrowing the terms of former President Aquino, he labeled that as a failure government experiment. And with the new setup headed by the Moro Islamic Liberation Front, the so-called BARMM, Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao, and those problems can be attributed to what? It can be attributed from a very simple term. We call it as wrong diagnostic measure that fails to recognize our culture, our traditions, our religion, which we believe it is relevant for for realizing the national agenda for cultural unity. Now, another very important point that I would like to share with all of you here is that, the issue of how to contextualize, because we need really to contextualize the knowledge culture of Islam and its relevance to national unity. I am not here to provide you all these kind of historical facts to support my argument, but I'm just giving a very brief comments in order to understand this. Now, one of the challenges faced by Manila-centered, I call it Manila-centered, or the North academics, is their little knowledge of Islam. Their little knowledge about Muslim culture and history. And this is what we call historical amnesia due to what they call these negative perceptions about our culture and our history. Now, the remnants of social integration, racism, and ethnocentrism are felt in the Christian-dominated educational establishments. You see, if you look at one of the most important books circulated and used by university students as well as high school, 300 pages, and you can only find half a page about Muslims. And those statements are not also sympathetic to the Muslim communities. And this is actually, it needs to be addressed if they want to really come up with sustainable peace in the country. Now, with reference to the statement of Samuel Tan, a renowned scholar in the Philippines, he has correctly pointed out that cultural consciousness, I want to use the word cultural consciousness, should be capitalized by the government to address the geographical, linguistic, and religious barriers that separate the people in the country. So this is very important that this cultural consciousness, as understood by them, may lead to the so-called coexistence and so on. Despite the prevalence of secularism in the Philippines, the set of principles and methods laid by the Quran and the Sunnah must be given attention due to its relevance to innovation, relevance to creativity, and sustainable development. The challenge is, this is actually the big problem, the challenge is how to reinvent new language for Islamic economic and cultural reform that would pass through the criterion set by secular system within the Philippine context. Although there are strengths and weaknesses of the reforms introduced by the government, there is, as I said before, urgent need to reevaluate the laws and policies, because there were reforms proven as successful mechanism for the transformation in the Christian areas that had been debacle, that had been failure in the Muslim areas. We have observed for the past few decades how Muslim communities in the Philippines have demanded the right for a meaningful reform, where Maqasid al-Sharia perspective of change could be implemented amid secular system of governance. Now, obviously, such aspiration is not impossible in the given socio-political landscape, since its connotation for the culture of peace and sustainable development is very profound indeed. And thus, if its language and philosophy is properly understood uh, at the national level, then the Philippines will be certainly become a model uh, as a truly multicultural society. And if that will happen, I think people will follow the footsteps of the Philippine, let us say, republic. Now, another very important issue that I would like to share in this discourse is the issue of bridging the socio-cultural gap. Now, when we refer to many important literatures research in the Philippines, it is quite unfortunate that, their emphasis is conflict. And as a student of Philippine studies as well as Islamic studies, I am here advocating a very important point that we have to redirect the discourse into how to establish that kind of link. That is the most important thing. Now, at a time when ideas and worldviews seek to distort the culture established by humanistic perspective of life, because I believe that there were many Muslim organizations in the Philippines who are in line with such kind of initiative and understanding. Now, there have been a number of concerned Filipinos who took the pride in protecting their true Filipino identity by opting to promoting intercultural dialogue and the rapprochement of culture instead of engaging in an armed struggle. Because this is actually another misperception that once you are Muslim in the Philippines, they directly link you with those problematic groups like Abu Sayyaf and the Muslim rebels recently, the ISIS, who was responsible of, let us say, turning the Islamic city of Marawi into rubble because of a wrong understanding about Islam. And I don't have to emphasize here about the ideology adhered by the ISIS group. And such kind of group existed in the Philippines in 2017. And as I said, now Muslim in those areas still struggling for the so-called rehabilitation and to return back to their homes. Now, the collaborative efforts between the Ulama League of the Philippines, let us say, the Imam Council of the Philippines and other Muslim organizations in the Philippines, and the bishops, this is important, bishops in the Philippines, is a good example of such initiative that gain confidence among academics and policymakers that peace is indeed very much possible to be attained in the country. As we all know that bridging the socio-cultural gap between Muslim minority and minority Christian majority has been an enormous challenge in the Philippine history. You cannot deny that. And I think this will also be affirmed by Prof. Shukri Langputi. Therefore, a holistic approach to Muslim history in the Philippines requires an objective orientation. I'm using the word objective orientation for the recognition of Islamic ideas, advocacies, particularly the responses of Muslim intellectuals towards the cause of the problem, which is actually a reductionist and materialistic perspective of change and reform. Now, with the government's recognition of the paramount place of Islamic law in the life of Muslim communities in the Philippines, Muslim personal laws and the recognition of Muslim values and beliefs have gained legal recognition. In fact, even as early as early 70s, the Code of Muslim Personal Laws was ratified, codified, and become a part of national law. Now, the Muslim personal laws, as I said, aside from that, there are relevant laws and policies which were introduced to readdress the problem of Muslim education, economics, so that hatred, bigotry, what else? Prejudices and intolerance can be eradicated in the entire social system, because, as we all know, these have been detrimental to the vision of achieving one nation. Now, another very, very important points, I still have a few minutes, I hope I can cover, okay?
Yes, Prof, you have 5 minutes, inshallah.
I still have, I'm looking at my time, I still have 5 to 7 minutes.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, adhering to the post-colonial discourse and secular worldview, scholars of Philippine studies, like an American scholar, Robert McCamus, Peter Going, and other renowned scholars have embraced, this is the problem, they have embraced anthropocentric view of man, culture, and society, whereby the foundation of Muslim identity is studied from the intellectual lens of dominant culture. This is the problem, because whatever coming about the Muslim minorities, they understand it from the dominant culture, you know, and that is actually the problem. If even if you serve education to us Muslims, and you are coming up with a template which is designed for your people and not designed for the Muslim minorities. In fact, what they call is such kind of exclusivist, I want to use the word exclusivist, approach to human rights, gender issues, and etc., have been questioned by practicing Muslim scholars and intellectuals. We cannot say that they are just what they call is complacent to that situation, but they have responded, and those responses, I hope we can cover those kind of responses in few minutes time, maybe during the question and answer. Now, rethinking the composition, this is important, rethinking the composition of an integrated knowledge culture that would pose through as a mechanism to patch up the decades of conflict in the Philippines is important, and it has been necessary for Muslim policymakers to reevaluate, as I said, their strengths and weaknesses, because by reevaluating it, then they maybe come up with something practical solutions. Now, the Bangsamoro, the BRMM, as I mentioned before, the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao, the National Commission for Muslim Filipinos. These are the most important institution established by the government to administer the socio, political, cultural, and religious affairs of the Muslim communities. But sad to note, they have fully subscribed, and to some extent, without reservation, following the recommendation patterned by the government, patterned from the government framework, following, of course, the recommendation of United Nations Development Program, UNDP, and SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals. And those approaches are very much, it predominates in the state institution. Now, it is indeed a challenge for Muslim leaders, intellectuals in the Philippines to transform, to transform themselves as a legitimate social scientist. This is what Prof. Tamim is trying to emphasize in his conclusion, how to transform the youth and the Muslim leaders as a legitimate social scientist, the true doctors for people, who know the problem of the heart, the people and the given the given ecosystem, who will propel, and I want to use the word propel, the forgotten essence of humanity, despite of the challenges posed by, the prevalent worldview, which is we call materialism. Now, in this age of cultural plurality, there are few members of the Senate and Congress who articulated reforms within the perspective of integrated education, integrated economics, and integrated legal system, whereby Islam as a rich tradition and culture has been consulted. In fact, the committee for for coming up with the provisions that would consist of the so-called Code of Muslim Personal Law and Organic Law, the recent development under headed by the Moro Islamic Liberation Front. And Islam had been, let us say, consulted, and of course with the help of the neighboring countries. And I would like to mention, thank you for the Malaysian government for the past 17 years, as well as Indonesia, that they had devoted to come up with something, a solution to end the problem of the brothers in the southern Philippines. In fact, the approval of the Muslim Organic Law was possible, and we have to understand this. Possible because the meaning of civilizational renewal has taken place to some extent in the recent administration of Duterte. Now, the Western media is, of course, to me, they are trying to, demonize the administration of Duterte, but that is not fair to his administration, because he had introduced substantial reform to the Muslim communities, and we have to acknowledge that. And now,
Prof, you have another 2 minutes more.
2 minutes. So let me push. Let me go to my, let us say, to my concluding remarks. And I hope, 2 minutes, I will finish my presentation. First, I would like to emphasize that there is a need to have a clear vision of the core of the crisis, particularly in the education system, because we from International Islamic University, we believe that in order to solve the problem, we have to solve the problem of education, and that must also be implemented in the Philippines. Number two, the need to define and design the appropriate task which is necessary for the revitalization of Muslim education system with the mainstream national education system. We are not suggesting here isolation, but we are suggesting here cooperation. Now, Muslim leaders, Muslim scholars, leaders should work together to instill Islamic vision and make them relevant. So this is the important thing, that they should become key players in the national body politics, not just mere followers. Third, in the quest for finding holistic education, there is a need to train future Muslim scholars in the Philippines to have a good command of the traditional methodology. Because people are now running away from the traditional methodology. We have to know the traditional methodology and the awareness of its strength and shortcomings to properly address, let us say, the legal, juristic, theological, and political disagreements among Muslims. Because we are having also internal problems that we need to address, as well as the problem with the majority. And to be aware that, this is important also among the postgraduate students, to be aware that reasoning or the rule of intellect is not the only source of knowledge. Extreme rationalism, as we all know, is to be viewed as a threat to every sound culture, tradition, and civilization. We have to spell that out. Now, the harmony between Islamic revealed sciences and human science must be emphasized due to its importance in the given political system. And fourth, the concept of unity of God from Islamic perspective and from biblical point of view can be also be, let us say, utilized And the unity of knowledge must be understood within the perspective of Islam as a universal religion, as a universal culture, as a universal civilization. Now, through, last point, through a meaningful synergy, I want to use the word synergy, of cultures of knowledge, it is hoped that Muslims and non-Muslim in the Philippines alike will be spiritually and intellectually empowered to grasp the essence of religious and civilizational cooperation amid secularism. By that, I thank you so much for your kind attention. I can see that our dear moderator is about to stop me. Before he will stop me, I have to say, wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah, wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Jazakumullah khairan. Thank you so much, Prof. Ali Zaman, for an enlightening and entertaining presentation on Muslim minorities of Philippines. We appreciate your efforts and contribution to the conference. Now we are moving to the Thailand, our next presentation on Thailand Muslim minorities, realities and prospects. And I would like to introduce a distinguished presenter, Dr. Shukri, briefly. Dr. Shukri Langputeh is Deputy Director for International Relations and Alumni, Fatani University, Thailand. He obtained his bachelor's in political science from International Islamic University, Malaysia, and his PhD in international relations from Jian University, China. He was awarded one of the 500 most influential Muslims in the world 2009 by the Prince Al-Walid bin Talal Center for Muslim Christian Understanding, Georgetown University. He has administrational experiences such as Dean, Faculty of Liberal Arts and Social Sciences, Yala Islamic University, as a Vice President of Southern Thailand Political Science and Public Administration Association. Dr. Shukri is a visiting scholar to many local and international universities and institutions, and he has strong involvement in discussion on Muslim minorities, special focus on Thailand. So without further ado, I would like to invite Dr. Shukri for his presentation on Muslim minorities of Thailand, realities and prospects. Doctor, please welcome.
Yes, Jazakumullah khairan jaza, Brother Ashad. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah, alladhi bi ni'matihi tatimmu salihat, wa la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah, ma ba'd. My beloved and respected Professor Tamim Musama, Professor Dr. Dawood, and, my moderator today, and last but not least to all participants of this seminar on Muslim minorities in Southeast Asia, which today we have Southeast Asia and Subcontinent. Alhamdulillah, I do appreciate, the International Islamic International Institute of Muslim Unity of coming up with new things to discuss about Muslim minorities. That is, we are discussing realities and prospects. Normally, we are always highlighting challenges, problems, and way out. But now, this time, I'm so happy to discuss issues which, of course, there are some obstacles, there are challenges, there are problems among us living in Muslim minority countries. But in fact, when we are looking at realities, we do have a lot of things that we can do sometimes much more better than Muslims in majority countries, which I will highlight. Since I do have 20 to 25 minutes, and then I have to open for question and answer, but I have to move to another province for another program for all, school administrators in 5 provinces in the south. So I'll be a speaker there, inshallah, after this. So this is what I would like to say, that we Muslim minorities in Thailand are busy with our works and efforts in order to show to the people in Thailand, also outside, that Al-Islam ya'lu wa la yu'la alayh. At the same time, the way we work is we are trying to bring, baldatun tayyibatun wa rabbun ghafur. So even though we are not, with the king who are Muslim, even though we are not with the presidents who are leading our prayer, even though we are not having, prime ministers who are having the same belief with us, but we are trying hard how to bring baldah tayyibah wa rabbun ghafur to the land that Muslim is not really a supreme power. At the same time, living in this kind of a situation, I would like to say that when Allah وَمَنْ لَمْ يَحْكُمْ بِمَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْكَافِرُونَ. For those who don't bring the rule of God, the laws of Allah to be practiced. So you are dhalimun, you are kafirun, you are fasiqun, all those things, of course, interesting, because we have to come up and look at what is the fiqh al-istita'ah, what is the fiqh al-aqaliyat, and some other fiqh, some other jurisprudence that we need to bring along to discuss. Then finally, what are our realities and prospects? So as Brother Ashad has mentioned, I am from Fatani University. I'm happy to be in IUM many years ago, and thank you IUM for enlightening me by connecting with friends both from minority countries and majority countries. I'll do my best to present what is happening in Thailand, what are realities that I would like to share with you. And since time is a bit limited, so I will go together between realities and prospects together. So let's say I'm living in Thailand, a country where Muslim is just 5.6% officially. According to Muslim statistics, we have more or less like 10 plus percent. But for the government statistic, for the time being, we just have 5.6% of Muslim living in the whole country. But anyway, no one is forcing me not to say Bismillah. I'm still able to say Bismillah in this land, and I'm happy to be in this land as well in order to work for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for mankind and for Ummah. Okay, these are the languages that Muslims speak in Thailand. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh in Arabic. So we do speak Arabic, and we had the Islamic school. I'll discuss further. We have Thai language called Kwam Sati Jumide Tuktan. Thai language is something related to Buddhism, related to Brahmanism, or even Hinduism. So it shows that before the coming of Islam, which there are a lot of books, a lot of theories, and even discussions on where Islam come to Patani, to Bangkok, or even to northern Thailand. But anyway, after all those happen, we are here, Muslim in Thailand. Then we do also using English, and the one thing I would like to discuss here is Bahasa Melayu, that Malay language, but JavaScript. And when we are talking about JavaScript, one of the strengths of Southern Thailand, we have Kitab Kuning. We have a yellow Kitab written by ulama of the past. This is the glory of Southern Thailand, that we have a lot of Pondok school, and we have a lot of the Kitab Jawi writing here. Okay, my prologue to start with is to show this. In minority situations, sometimes you can see this kind of, I don't have to elaborate, but just would like to think about this is what's happened among us. For survival, sometimes some Muslims have to be with the government. For survival, sometimes some Muslims have to connect themselves with the OIC, or with, like Brother Ali Zaman, my friend, has mentioned. There are many efforts, but at the same time, more or less like seems that we are sincere to each other, but we are killing our friends. So we have to strategize all the efforts done by Muslim in this situation. And it happens also, in order to show in my prologue, in my introduction, that this is the situation for survival. People have to do something against others. And at the same time, for survival, we have to work harder. Even there are people who are, who are rolling something down to you. And unfortunately, sometimes we Muslim in minority situation, we don't have a body, a central body of strategizing our main strategy, our national strategy. So when we have, like Brother Ashad knows, in Sri Lanka, we have a lot of organizations as well. In Thailand, we do have the same thing. This group, and this group, and this group. So everyone has their own strategy, but there is no central body or no central a strong influential central board, which plays the role in doing things in line. So it takes us time. It takes us sometimes lives. It takes us sometimes more money. That's why when we are talking about reality and what are the prospects, one thing that we have to go with is how to strategize the good life of Muslim in minority situation. This also happened. Finally, we cannot move from some place to another place because of lacking of this effort. Okay, when we are talking about realities and prospects, I'd like to highlight here. I got six realities, six pillars of realities. The first is geographical reality. A lot of friends who know that Thailand is just next to Malaysia, and many of them know that Thailand is, above Malaysia and down here, Laos and Myanmar. But I would like to look at what are good things about being here, like in the heart of ASEAN. If you look at Thailand, you see, up there we have Laos, Myanmar, we have Vietnam, Cambodia. Down here we have Malaysia, Brunei, we have Singapore, all those things. So being Thai citizen, I have access easily to friends and brothers and sisters in Laos, Myanmar, Cambodia. So that's why Thai Muslims normally speak languages of neighbors. And then I will discuss also demographical reality, political reality, economical reality, educational reality, and then finally I will just conclude with social reality. So in order to show within a very limited time, I'm finishing my papers in the future, and then you can read more of this thing that I'm trying to present in just 1-2 seconds. Muslim lives in all 4 parts of the country. This is what I'd like to highlight when we're talking about geographical reality of Muslim in Thailand. Normally, Malaysian friends know that, okay, orang Melayu, orang Thailand, Melayu, Thailand. So normally we are talking about southern Thailand. A lot of Malaysian friends coming to Yala, Patani, Narathiwat, or also to my province, Satun. But in fact, Muslims are not also only living in southern Thailand, but in Bangkok alone, we have more than 100 masjid in Bangkok alone. And in the north, the border of Myanmar and Laos, we do have more or less about more than 50 masajid. And Muslims there are very active. Economic development, I'll discuss it later. So we have Islamic committee. We have National Islamic Committee, which I will discuss in the paper. And we have Islamic committee at the provincial level. The condition and the prerequisite of having Islamic committee at provincial level is you must have 3 masajid. You have 1 masjid, you have 1 masjid. You have 2 masjid, you have 2 masjid. Once you have 3 masjid, you can register with the National Islamic Committees in order to establish the provincial level Islamic committee in order to take care of Muslim communities in that province. So for the time being, out of 77 provinces, we do have 40 provinces that already established Islamic committees. And we have registered masjid, more than 50 provinces in the country, more than 4,000 masjid in the country. So when we are talking about geographical reality about Muslim minority, we would like to, inshallah, in the future, talking about Muslim minorities in Thailand, not only in the south, not only focusing on Bangkok, not only Chinese Muslim in northern Thailand, but we will see the whole things. When you look at this map, you look at this map, you can see that Muslims scattered around. You can go to the north, you can see Muslims there. You can pray there with the Hanafi masjid. You can come down to Bangkok, you can see, 170 plus registered masjid. Registered according to Shafi'i Mazhab is you must have 40 members of that masjid. You see on the orange color, this is northeastern. We have also, Muslim communities there, and the pink one is southern Thailand, nearby Malaysia. Well, I'll go further for the demographical reality. and prospect. We have different Muslim ethnic groups scattered in 4 regions. I will try to use the scale of 4 regions in order for you to understand that in the future, when you try to understand Muslim in Thailand, you will divide into 4 parts, 4 regions. We use part or region. In Thailand, we use the word part. Part means a region or part in English. So we have Chinese Muslim in northern part. So when we are talking about Chinese Muslim, of course, we can go further with the history of the coming of Chinese Muslim from Yunnan. So because of the history of China communism, finally Muslim fled from China, from Kunming to Myanmar to northern Thailand, and finally they become Hui Chinese Muslim in the northern part. We have Pathan, we have Pushtun, we have Bengali Muslim in northeastern, and they are working more on the livestock. And we have Malay, Javanese, more Christian, Thai Muslim in southern part, and in Bangkok, in central part. We are talking about central part of Thailand. It's not only Bangkok. We have Ayutthaya, we have Nonthaburi, we have Chachoengsao. All these 5 provinces are mostly strong provinces for Muslim development there. See, and finally, when we are coming down to the south, we have Malay Muslim, the majority Malay Muslim in southern part, including Jala, Patani, Narathiwat, and Satun. And in fact, it's starting from the Kara, Sukati Kara, come down to Songkhla. Also, we have a Muslim community there. Most of them are Malays. The second is we are talking about different ways of life and economic setting. You cannot understand, you should not understand that the demography of Muslim in Thailand is exactly the same, using the same pattern, the same platforms. No, we have different lifestyles, or even some groups of people do not get married with other groups, like cross marriages among Muslims themselves also sometimes doesn't happen. So this is you can see that different ways of life and economic setting in different parts. But anyway, I want to show you also there are multiple strengths or multiple expertise and professionals because of being different ethnic group, different lifestyles. That finally, when we talk about Muslim in our country, you can see that Muslim in Thailand are not really having or being expertise in one area, but we have starting from being guru, Islamic studies, until we have diplomat, we have businessman, and we have different areas of professionalism. Then I move next to political reality. When we are talking about political reality, I'd like to say here that living in minority situation doesn't mean that we cannot get participated in politics. So Thailand was being democratic starting from 1932 when the King Rama VII is given the throne. I mean, he has given the power to the people. And in 1932, the first constitution of Thailand has been drafted. And finally, it is done. And in first constitution of Thailand, we had at least 4 Muslims who were among the main participants in that drafting of the constitution. The one I would like to mention here is the Sheikhul Islam himself. We had Sheikhul Islam, already 12 Shi'i Sheikhul Islam, but the next one, if I'm not mistaken, is the 14th Sheikhul Islam from Malay descendant. And he himself is the one who participated in the constitution of Thailand, the drafting of that constitution, and he was active. So it means that number one or top organization of Muslim community in Thailand was getting involved in the constitution drafting in 1932. It means that Muslims are not left behind. And there are also 3 personalities from one family in Bangkok who were active as well. I mean, in short, I would like to say that Muslims were not left behind when the first democratic government was formed, and then the first constitution was drafted. Okay, second point I'd like to mention is that based on that participation from the beginning of democratization of Thailand. That's why Muslim political position, like we used to have deputy prime minister, the president of the Universities Council or University Senate of Fatah University, His Excellency Muhammad Matta. He was the first Muslim deputy prime minister. And after him, we don't have so far. Inshallah, in the future, we will have deputy prime minister. I mean, the one next to the prime minister. So it means more or less he's like number 2 or number 3 of the country is Muslim. Okay. And he was at the same time minister. I mean, he was also a minister of Interior Affairs, minister of what else? Transportation, you know. And at the same time, you know, he was the president of our Senate. So we realized from the beginning that how he plays the role as Muslim, being university's council president, university Senate president, at the same time being politician in the parliament. And he was active as a speaker of the parliament. And among others, people say, people admire and appreciate that Muhammad Noor was the best speaker of the parliament since we have until now. He knows how to control the politician, and he knows how to start and stop, you know, the discussion in the parliament. And it was smart leadership in the parliament in his time. Well, we have also ministers, you know, we have deputy ministers, we have a Muslim governor, even though the number is still not many, but more or less like 2, 3, 4, 5, not more than that for the governor. But we have to think about how can we produce more and more, like a political science student from Chulalongkorn University, from Thammasat. So we have to think about how to send, you know, good student, excellent student to those programs in order for them to come back and become governor or become somebody in the in the government. We have lots of district officers. Okay. The next one is I would like to say about parties. In the past, Muslim has tried, you know, few times to establish their own political party. After you know, establishing the party for one session, they disrupted, and the last one was Ummah Party or Prachachat Party was established by Muslims as well. Good or bad, right or wrong, promising or not, it's not the matter. But at least to me, as small political scientist, I would like to say that how dare we are in this system to establish a political party and to win the heart of the people of the whole country. It's not easy, but at least it is a dream of Muslims. Which before that, they were joining another party, another leading party, and another leading opposition parties as well. And we have, in order to cope up with this kind of thing, that's why we have political scientists in Thailand. We have political science program in my university, and we try to send, you know, some scholars to be in political science program in Chulalongkorn, in the Prince of Songkhla University, in order for them to be guru, to be teachers of students who are going to be somebody in the future. I show you this. On the left side was my great grandfather, who was the first Muslim minister. Syekh Abdullah Lang Puteh, my great grandfather, he was the first Muslim minister. And then when I mentioned Muhammad Noor, he's the middle, and the last one on the right is a former secretary of ASEAN Secretariat, ASEAN Community, His Excellency Suri Pisuwan, late Suri Pisuwan. So these are photos just to show some. Next one is economical reality and prospects. Remind me if I got to finish my time, but I will try to finish first, and then I will open the session if possible. But I have to move, and then I will discuss while driving, inshallah. Okay, when we are talking about economical reality and prospects, we have quite strong agroeconomic setting of Muslim in 4 parts. Here I mentioned trading in North and Central Thailand. We have livestock in Northeastern Thailand. We have farming and fisheries in Southern Thailand. In the paper, I will discuss further how they got involved, and then how can we go on with the empowerment programs in order to let them become leading figures in the area, inshallah, in the future. Next one is Islamic Bank. We can say we are fortunate to have Islamic Bank, but at the same time, we can also say maybe unfortunate because Islamic Bank, until now, the DM, the director manager, until now, the MD, managing director, until now, there is no even single Muslim who are appointed as a managing director. I don't know whether the government wants to hold this position for non-Muslim, or the government want to control this, or quote unquote, Muslim has not enough capacity to be there. So we have to think about either we were blocked, cannot be the managing director of Islamic Bank, which is government bank in fact, or we are not capable enough to be chosen and appointed to be there. So we are working on that, inshallah. Due to that limitations, finally, we had strong Islamic cooperatives. We have strong Islamic cooperative. Lately, people from Turkey come to southern Thailand and ask us to organize a conference in Turkey in order to learn how Islamic cooperative in Thailand is working so active and having very huge asset and having 100,000 membership, and which is under one umbrella, national. I'll show you after this. So the Islamic cooperatives, besides the problem of having Islamic Bank, which is managed by Muslim ourselves, we have a strongest cooperative in Southeast Asia. We claim that because people from Malaysia, people from Indonesia used to come and learn from us how Islamic cooperative in Thailand are doing a good job. We are among the productive cooperatives in Southeast Asia. And because of having Islamic cooperative, we could empower a lot of Muslim population in the south, in the north, in central Bangkok, central Thailand, in order to be able to stand up living in this kind of society. And what is interesting is that the limitations of those going into managing Islamic Bank led by the government, finally we are able to come up with alternative financial institution for Muslim in Thailand by ourselves. Okay, this is the example of Ibu Affan Islamic Cooperative. This is Baraka Islamic Cooperative in different provinces. And TICON, you can see TICON, TICON is Thailand Islamic Cooperative Network. So this is not for one country, one province, but it is for Thailand the whole. And more or less, I think about 30 Islamic cooperatives, and they have the asset of 1,000 million baht, trillions, and also having 100,000 plus membership. So this is the efforts. And when I mentioned this thing to Brother Ashad, saying that we don't want only to talk about problems, but we want to see what are the alternatives that we promote ourselves among this limitation. But finally, the Buddhist people comes to learn from us how to be Islamic, how to be the cooperative based on moral and morality, no interest, no. You see, okay. Next is I'm going to talk about educational reality. In fact, we can talk about this for hours, but I just would like to show you that because of being under Thai territories, we have national education, we have this and that, just like any other country. Our country also provided enough educational system for everyone in the country. But the problem is when our students go to public or national education, they cannot learn Quran, they cannot learn this and that as requirement for a good Muslim. So that's why Islamic educational institution has emerged everywhere. Even in Bangkok, in Phuket, in Chiang Mai, you have Islamic kindergarten here and there. Not only the issue of language that we highlighted, Arabic, English, Thai, of course, and Malay, but also the integration with Islam is happened there. And then it becomes a promising institution by the parents who sent them. So you can see that when we're talking about educational reality, we have educational systems starting from kindergarten, primary schools, even homeschool we have, secondary schools, vocational schools, and colleges and universities. And Fatani University is one of the examples that we had at the higher or tertiary education. We had vocational colleges, and we have efforts. Now, alhamdulillah, there are a lot of efforts to establish more and more universities. We appreciate and we push them. not only Fatani University in Thailand, but in the future, maybe Sheikh Al Fatani University or maybe some other universities here. Ahlan wa sahlan. Okay, we also having one reality which comes along with the institution, that is intellectuals and professionals. So we have religious studies, so we have intellectuals, we have ulama, we have professors, we have PhD holders, and we have scholars in social sciences. Some of them are national figure. We have science and technology. Some of our scientists and our people in science technology are doing a very good job, especially on halal technology. Like international law court, Muslims are working so hard in order to show how important the halal technology, and it was established in international law court university, which is the best university in the country, and halal center is there, mashallah, and other things. So when we are talking about educational reality, I would like to show the whole picture, how Muslim can bring as upper hand to Rahmat al-Alamin. And we believe that because of this education, finally we create Baldah Tayyibah wa Rabbul Ghafur. This is one photo only, and we have time to show more. This is a Fatani University. After 20 years, we have 30 buildings, all the endowment building. We have the building from Qatar, from Kuwait, from Saudi, or from Malaysia also. We do have ones by Sultan Apolis for Faculty of Quran and Sunnah. So this is the efforts of Muslim in non-Muslim community in order to show that we cannot be left behind in terms of education if we want to empower our people. Finally, another last reality and prospects I would like to mention about social reality and prospects. I think majority minority reality is this thing. We are majority in the south. Okay, we are majority in the south. Jala, Patani, Narathiwat. We are more than 70 to 80%. So when we are living in southern Thailand, forget about the security issues. Okay, I don't have time to discuss here. Forget about roadblocks and the security issues and BRN, all this kind of thing. Now we are talking about being majority in the south. You can feel like as if you are in Kelantan when you are in Jala Patani. You feel like you are in Kedah province when you are in my province Satun, because being majority in the south, which is different from people who are living in Bangkok. Sometimes they are just a few people in the community. At the same time, we are minority in the country. We become minority in the country. When we're talking about the whole country, we are minority. But we are again majority in the region, including Malaysia, Brunei, Indonesia. We become majority. But when we are talking about the globe, we are second majority after Christianity. So these things should be counted and should bring into consideration when we are talking about social reality. Why? Because we Muslim in Thailand, sometimes we feel like left behind, sometimes we feel like less motivated. But when we are talking about the Ummah, what I mean here is the Ummatic feelings. We can feel that, okay, even though I am here, a very small community, but I'm having the same thing like people in Jeddah, people in Morocco, people in Jakarta. Okay. The last one is national social movement. We Muslim get involved in a lot of national social movement. For example, marijuana protests, which just happened, LGBT law, free alcohol law. So Muslims are not left behind and get involved in those kind of activities in order to show that we do care this kind of thing as well. Finally, then I come with the epilogue, with the conclusion, with photos. This is the efforts that we are trying to bring down the wall. We Muslim in minority situation, we bring the wall down and let the bridge become replace the wall. Okay, so we walk to the majority communities. Those who are in majority communities can come to us as well and see our strength and finally become national strength together. Otherwise, they will just look at as threat. They were thinking that Muslims are threat in Thailand, but we said no. We are strength of the country. You can use us. You can utilize our opportunities in order to strengthen the country. And inshallah, we will do this hand in hand, the future, inshallah. And we will try to do this as well, Brother Ashad. We try to empower people who can do this way and who can do that way. Those who are capable in making things circle, those who are capable in making things square, let them do this, and then we try to collect all those, professionals to become strength of the community. And at the end of the day, we would like to pray and to do that everyone become winners, everyone become hero, everyone become number one, become champions. Not only this and not only that. And inshallah, we are having two people in our country. We have shuyukh and shabab. We have shuyukh and shabab. In minority situation, two group of people are interesting. The first is shuyukh. They should come and lead, but give the youngest, time. But the next one is shabab should learn and should do something innovative in order to replace the older one. So it's time for us in the minority to be able to stand up and move the world just like the majority is doing. Now I'm working with some organizations, some friends, in order to create platform for what? For OIC, for minority group. See now when we are talking about OIC, I want to go to enter OIC meeting. I cannot because we can just be only observers. We are from minority countries. Inshallah, the future, Brother Ali, Dr. Ali, please, together with us, Brother Basiran from Vietnam, we want to have more like the body of minority groups, minority people, to think about how can we move the world together with others. Inshallah, bismillah. And I would like to say thank you. Terima kasih. Okun, Kopchai, Kayuzi, Tun Badai, in Myanmar. Selamat po. Selamat po. Brother Ali.
Selamat po. Selamat.
Okay. Thank you so much, Prof. For your enlightening and entertaining presentation on Muslim minorities of Thailand, realities and prospects. He has covered 6 realities: geographical, demographical, political, economical, educational, and social realities. We appreciate your efforts and contribution to the conference. We are very grateful you to took the time out of your busy schedule to address the conference. Now we have reached the Q&A session. If you would like to ask a question, please raise your hand and I will call on you to ask the question. Unmute yourself, please identify yourself and the presenter to whom you would like to ask the question. You can also put the question in the chat box. Yes, Brother Arafat from Sri Lanka.
Yes. Assalamu alaikum.
Yes,
it's a pleasure to participate in wonderful session. I have learned a lot of things from this great session about our minority issues. Our distinguished speakers presented wonderfully. Thanks a lot to distinguished speakers for this efforts. I have only one question. Since Muslim minorities in our region encounter complex problems, but still we couldn't find a common body or a council that is concerned about particular or peculiar issues faced by our regional Muslim minorities. In order to address them collectively by providing workable solution. It is a main problem. So we are normally separately talking about our issues and challenges. We need to find very strong body that will address collectively our issues. So is there any efforts moving about that? I am asking this question, expecting a very good answer. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much. Prof. Tamim, I think.
Thank you very much, Brother Azad.
Yeah.
Thank you, Brother Arafat Karim, for your question. Truly speaking, in general, we are divided. There might be some efforts in some countries individually towards focusing on the prospects of Muslim minorities. From the presentation, it is very obvious that both Thailand and the Philippines have performed better as compared to other countries that we see in general. That is why we have been always suggesting that we should have an united front. We should have an umbrella organization in which we bring all Muslim NGOs, political parties, religious scholars, intellectuals, academics, to discuss the issues related to Muslim minority in a country. For example, if it is India, then the background is different. The nature is different. The issues are different. And therefore, a body should be constituted in order to discuss, study, and thoroughly investigate on various issues and problems. Then we should have an action committee to move forward. The problem here is we have not been successful in negotiating with other groups or other religious scholars or other political leaders, particularly in the context of India. Muslims are divided. Every organization is individually giving statement, and there is no collective effort. And as a result, they are unable to come up with a solid, united proposal to the authorities to what should be the future of the Muslims in India. So my concern is we should put aside all our differences, theological differences, political differences, cultural differences, even linguistic differences, because people in South speak one language, people in the North speak another language. The people do not have a common language in the context of India. Many languages are spoken. So we need to have that kind of common body and then negotiate with political party leaders. So my concern is even we should discuss with the Vishwa Hindu Parishad, we should discuss with the RSS, we should discuss with the Sangh Parivar, we should go and meet these leaders and discuss with them to talk about how to really move forward to have a secular, democratic, united India. For example, such a situation may be there in other contexts, and in which case we need input from those countries which are having problems. For example, Vietnam, there should be a body in Vietnam. In Laos, there should be a body. I have come to know in Vietnam and Laos, even Muslims do not have sufficient reading materials regarding Islam. They do not have Muslim teachers or Islamic scholars in the way that we have in the subcontinent or in Thailand or even in the Philippines or in other minority countries. So Cambodia, Vietnam, and Laos need more attention in this region because their Islamic understanding is very, very insignificant. So this is my humble answer. We have Dr. Ali Zaman and our beloved brother Shukri Langpute is there. They may be able to give you more insights on this issue, inshallah.
Yeah, please welcome.
Yes,
Thanks, sir.
Shukri, proceed. You are my sheikh.
Yeah, I do strongly agree with my guru, Prof. Tamim Musama. But we need, furthermore information for decision-making of different countries. So this institute is playing a very important role in collecting the data, losing data among Muslim communities. Because what's happened in many countries, when we are talking about how to help Muslim minorities, if they are doing jihad, we will send them weapons. If they are doing this, we will send them money. But I do appreciate what Dr. Mahathir Mohamad did many years ago for Muslim in southern Thailand or in Thailand in general, is to give education. Last 30 years, the first group of scholarship was given to people in southern Thailand. So when Prof. Tamim Musaba mentioned just now, special attention should be given to Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam, and Myanmar, because they were not given attention academically in the past.
Exactly.
Very little scholarship were given to Laos, to Myanmar. In fact, Laos, they are only 600 Muslim registered citizens in Laos. So every one of us can just take one person to be responsible for them to get education if we're planning nicely. But since we don't have enough information for decision making at the individual level, organizational level, or even international level, so we cannot do strategically. I do appreciate if this institute, under the leadership of Professor Dawood and also Professor Tamim Usama himself, could collect the current data, and then we try to get the real information, what are the needs of the people from that country. Then if we are giving scholarship for them to empower them in the future, should be specifically the area that they need to develop. Otherwise, scholarship for Islamic education, Islamic studies. It is good to study Islamic studies, but when they come back, the numbers of schools and madrasa is already full, so they will be jobless. So when they are when graduates of Islamic studies, Sharia, Sunuddin, from big universities in Islamic studies are jobless, people would think, no need to study. When you study, you cannot even help the community. So they are waiting for what? They are waiting for zakat from businessmen. they are waiting for. So finally, you can see the scenario, bro. The scenario,
Exactly.
it becomes like ulama is waiting the help from Umara or Tujar. So ulama is not smart at all. So that's why I really appreciate if we can have people in this kind of situation. I mean, society, for them to know Islam, basically what they should perform as Muslim, and the rest should be given scholarship on professionalism. According to what is the need of the country. Thank you very much. So it's just that I would like to respond. Brother Ali, Dr. Ali may know more than me in the case of his country. I just would like to talk about Thailand and also some other Indo-Chinese countries here. Thank you very much, Brother Asha. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam.
Yeah, just a very brief comments responding to the question of our brother Arafat Karim. I agree with Arafat that the nature of the problem that we are facing is very complex. Now, if the problem is complex, therefore, there is an urgent need to understand the core of the crisis. Because I believe that if we don't understand the crisis, then we will not be able to come up with a practical solution to the problem. Now, you see, of course, I have a kind of orientation in looking at minority studies. Like, for example, when I proposed that there must be a kind of introduction of an alternative knowledge culture that is needed in the Muslim world. Now, of course, in order to understand our problem, there must be a kind of clarity of vision. We have to have a very clear of what is our vision as a Muslim. And we cannot simply say that the vision of the Muslim is not to be shared by other humanities, by other group of people, because Islam is a universal religion that upholds the so-called universality, totality, and so on and so forth. So you see, what we are going to introduce to other communities, societies, is not exclusive to us. Now, and that is something lacking. And I have come up with the problem of an exclusivist approach to reform, whereby, in the case of the Philippines, because of that problem, that everything must be patterned in accordance with a dominant culture. Then as a result of that, just imagine that you are coming from the South and you are being catered with educational need that is patterned in accordance with the North, So what would happen is that you don't see yourself in that education. You don't see your let us say, your identity in the political system. You don't see the economic system in in the economic reform introduced by the government. And now, very recently, after the so-called multicultural, let us say, practices has been introduced in the country, now they start to realize the importance of Islamic finance, because there is a money in Islamic finance. They also develop laws pertaining to halal industry, because again, there is a money in that halal industry, and so on. So what we can do now is that, given this condition, that you see, we are living in this very materialistic world, so we have to understand the language, that kind of language, because to solve our problem, then we have to be dive into the so-called philosophy of let us say, the Philippine government, on how they conceptualize those kind of reform. So now, in the case of the Muslim Filipinos, what they are, because of the problem of the separation of the church and the state, now they have to present the idea of halal as a part of culture, rather than as a religious affairs, religious aspects. So once those kind of, let us say, language has been introduced, then the government can easily implement such kind of economic reform, because it's already taken or understood as a part and parcel of Muslim culture, because Philippines is a democratic country. So the moment you level that, let us say, halal as a religious aspect, automatically you will be facing constitutional, constitutional challenge. You'll be facing that, and I think it's not necessary now, because Muslim must come up with a new language, where to place Muslims as a relevant key players in every aspect. Now, another very important comment, I agree with Prof. Tamim, that we need to really solve our internal problems. Imagine in the case of the Philippines, even sighting the moon, sighting the moon in the Philippines, you will find at least two groups. They will start Ramadan in a different day. They cannot be united on that because of their theological differences. And this must be, let us say, addressed within the Philippine context. If we cannot solve such kind of minor problems that we are facing, how much more for another complex problem? That's the reason why we are trying to suggest here that we have to really have a very clear understanding of our problem, and to come up with doable practical solutions, inshallah.
Okay. Thank you so much, Prof. And there is another question from Brother Iftikhar. Why Muslim world support India?
I have answered this question in the chat box.
Okay.
Let me just briefly answer. The support is because of the trade interest.
Trade interest, yeah.
Trade interest. The Arab world, in particular the Gulf countries, are fully relying on imports from India, which include rice, wheat, edible oils, meat, and other important commodities. In addition, in the information and communication technology as well as banking sectors, thousands of Indians are working, and they are contributing to the development of these countries in one way or the other. And that is why, even though they make some statements against the atrocities committed against Muslims, but those statements are very mild and they do not have any impact in changing the situation in the context of India.
Thank you so much, Prof.
That is why, Brother Azad, I said,
Yeah.
there will be no miracle. There will be no miracle from any side. we have to start on our own based on our ground realities. This means I am advising the Muslim Ummah not to rely on some miracles to emerge from some places. We should really work based on our realities, our knowledge, our understanding of the entire culture. And inshallah, we will be able to achieve our goal if we are very clear in our vision, as our Dr. Ali Zaman put it rightly. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Alhamdulillah, we have come to the end of the program. Now I would like to invite Prof. Fatmir, Deputy Director of International Institute for Muslim Unity, for the concluding remarks.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Thank you very much, Brother Asad, the moderator of this session. So I would like to thank Prof. Dr. Tami Musama, as well as the keynote speaker for this session, as well as the other two speakers, Dr. Ali Zaman, as well as Dr. Sukri Lankute. Looking at the situation as it is presented by the three speakers related to the minorities in the region, I think the most important thing that we have understood, it is the unity. So, and when you look at the strength, as it was mentioned here, in Thailand, we have the strength, and somehow in the Philippines, we have the strength when you look at the minorities, whereas some other countries that Prof. Tamim mentioned, all the countries involved in the region. So this, we can see the weakness, and maybe if we cope up together, the balance will be there, inshallah. So I think that is the concern of International Institute for Muslim Unity about having this series of programs, is to know the reality of the minorities. So while knowing the reality about the minorities, that will be easy for us to facilitate the needs. At least we know the needs, and there perhaps can be some kind of opportunities. Now, when you look at, especially in Thailand, when you look at how Dr. Sukri presented the case, that on all aspects or dimensions, we can see that they are doing well compared to other minorities. So maybe that is a kind of opportunity that I can say, besides looking at the challenges that Muslim minorities are facing. But here I can see that opportunities are there. Why? Because how Muslims are going to cope up with the situation and to contribute, and that is done directly as well as indirectly. Now, the most important thing here, that how to solve this problem, that it was raised by all the three speakers, there is maybe a body that needs to follow up the situation and how to respond. I think that is the weakness, not only in minorities that we have, but in the majority Muslim countries as well. When I look at the reality, the follow-up by the Muslims is very weak. And we end up, like Dr. Sukri mentioned, and Prof. Tamim gave us this presentation, as well as Dr. Ali Zaman, like even Muslims themselves start to hate, studying in Islamic studies, Why? Because of when you are graduated, you are going to depend on charities, zakat. So there is no particular body to take care of this, And it seems like all this specialization, it looks without any value. So that is our problem. But this problem is coming from Muslims. Why? Because we don't facilitate what Allah has provided for us, and we abuse and misuse. When I look at the majority, and as I mentioned, this kind of perception, if we look at the reality, has been created by Muslims themselves as well, not only by others. And of course, we don't look at the others that they have different perception about us as Muslims. But if we Muslims create this problem, then this is supporting others, and this will be another problem that will not help us to be united. So this is how I look at it. Looking at what you have presented, it is very important for us to understand the real situation. And Alhamdulillah, as I mentioned, that we have reached at this conclusion by looking at it as, if we say, challenge as well as opportunity and the way to move forward. And the speakers, they have given us solutions when you look at the way to move forward. So I think that is very important. as it was mentioned here, how to support these minorities that are not supported by others, very small minorities. Perhaps we can have a body that can look after them, But as I mentioned, even Muslims who are in majority, they are facing problems, especially when you look at the specialization. So that is maybe another issue. We can have maybe other talks related to this, how to facilitate this problem. I think this would be another issue. But since we are talking about minorities, so the focus. And another thing that I would like to mention here, that I'm very much impressed as well as amazed by the talks, and they were very relevant to the session. When you look at the three speakers, the keynote speaker, Prof. Tamim, gave us a comprehensive understanding about what is going on in the region about Muslim minorities. And it was very specific when I look at Dr. Ali Zaman talking about Muslim minorities in Philippines and Dr. Shukri talking about Muslim minorities in Thailand. So we have this picture now, then this is helping us how to think to move forward, inshallah. So with that, I would like to thank the speakers on behalf of the International Institute for Muslim Unity for providing for us this insightful information and very beneficial for all of us, and especially the young leaders that are here with us, the students. So I believe that they will benefit and they will move forward to find a way how to tackle the problems and to provide solutions, starting with ourselves, So that is how to change the mindset. So this will help us looking at this, what we have learned. So I believe that this will help us to start with ourselves to change the mindset, as you mentioned, because we have these diversities within minorities. There is a problem. How to get rid of these diversities that we have created. And I believe that this presentation will help us, inshallah. So with that, I'd like to say thank you very much again. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Please, brother, sir.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi. Jazakumullah khairan, Prof. Takmir. We have reached the end of the program. I would like to take this opportunity to apologize for my shortcomings in hosting and moderating this session. I wish the organizers and the participants all the best, and may Allah bless us and accept our efforts in this journey of knowledge. Before we end, let's turn on our camera so we can take pictures together. Everyone, please. Okay. Okay. Thank you very much, and let's end with Tasbih Kafara in Surah Al-Asr.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Asad. Thank you very much.
Okay, barakallah, jazakumullah khairan.
Laila, you had come back, eh? Are you in Kuala Lumpur or elsewhere?
They are from Sri Lanka. From Sri Lanka.
I see.
Oh. Leila,
Prof. Tamim, I'm still in Turkey.
Oh, still Turkey. When are you coming?
Yeah, I'm coming on Monday, inshallah.
Okay, okay. Good luck.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam wa barakatuh.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.